Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Gene Coltas, presiding member. I've joined on today's meeting with Lindsay Baxter and Leo Donoghue as specialist members, and Councillors Catalano and Henderson from the City of Swan. I'll declare the meeting open and acknowledge traditional owners and pay respect to elders past and present of the land on which the meeting is being held. During the meeting, panel members may refer to technical devices to assist them in considering the information before them. And the meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Item 2 on part A of the agenda, I have apologies from Councillor Aaron Bowman from the City of Swan. Item 3, members on leave of absence, there are none. And item 4, under part A, note minutes of previous meetings, they're all on the DAP website. Part B of the agenda, I'll ask all panel members to duly notify that they've duly considered documentation contained within the agenda. On part B, please raise your hands. So Henderson, thank you. Item 2, disclosure of interest. I have none before me, but under the standing declaration of interest, council members may have considered the item on the agenda. Item 3 on part B of the agenda is the DAP application for multiple dwellings mixed-use development at 52 Ellen Sterling Parade, Ellenbrook. And at this point, we have a presenter, Mr. Ashley Richards from Ashley Richards and Associates, presentation in support of the application. Mr. Richards.
Thank you, presiding members, councillors and staff. Obviously, we have a 3-minute period, I understand, just to run through this. The site that we've selected for the NDIS apartments, and there are 15 NDIS apartments with 2 overnight accommodation units, is a very prominent site. It's on a corner. In fact, it has 3 street frontages, so it does have its challenges. One of the main points that we've followed through is to create more of an internal space for this site, because when you visit the site, there isn't a lot around there at the moment. Obviously, the train station is being built. So we've taken a different approach here to be also inward looking as well as external appearance, and a very strong corner statement given the position of the site relative to the train station and landscaping around it. We have gone through the process with the DRP members. We've had to make some modifications to the plans to allow more compliant solar access and ventilation. I think we've achieved that comfortably. One of the features of the development is to try and open the development up on the north with a large landscaping courtyard that connects through to the central void courtyard, where we have obviously a strong feature to the development. The height is compliant. We have a setback on the eastern side as requested by the City of Swan. But the emphasis was on the corner aspect. We've also provided a canopy along Ellen Sterling Parade as requested by the city. That has some articulation to it, and we can further articulate that in terms of variation in height as requested by the DRP members. The actual building itself, we think is going to be a high quality building for this area. Our client is really driven by the need for this use on this site in the NDIS, and the ability to create a low maintenance, high quality development. Hence where we've taken the development so far. We've looked at sustainable passive design outcomes. Obviously, we've got a central void with ventilation. We've opened that up on the site to get solar access into the apartments along the laneway, which was an issue initially. So we think we've overcome a lot of those problems. Parking is compliant. Its access in terms of SDA compliance is also very good because it's a flat site. Currently, there's nothing on the site. It's basically a vacant site, and all of the other sites around are also empty. The building, we think, is in fitting with the train station, and we've also addressed the corner with further detailing as requested by the DRP members. The materials we're using will be obviously a high finished, pre-finished cladding material, which will be a low maintenance. It will take on a residential as well as a commercial class 3 type approach. The materials that we're selecting are obviously will consist of materials that are recyclable, and we're very much aware of the need to have a sustainable development for the site, and therefore we consider that this development will be a showcase for the area that is starting to be developed and will be developed around the train station in the future. So I hope that gives you a reasonable understanding as to the development. It has very strong horizontal lines. It has very strong shade, void, and central features to the development. And certainly there's a lot of cost involved in this project, given the current climate, and we would like to consider that you appreciate the development as it currently stands. And if there are any questions, we're happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Panel members, anyone have a question of the presenters? Yes, Councillor Catalano.
Yeah, thank you. What kind of material is the cladding going to be made out of?
We're looking at a composite. It's a CFC, cement fibre sheet cladding, which has a pre-finished a Dulux coating on it, and it will have express joints. So it's something that obviously is a very high quality finish externally, which will mean that it's also low maintenance in the long term compared to a rendered building, painted building.
Okay. And what about its resistance to fire?
Yeah, it's a cement fibre sheet, which is obviously resistant to fire. Also, the building structure will be a combination of concrete, column and slabs with lightweight infill. All of that will be obviously protected and fire checked where necessary, so it will meet the requirements.
Great, thanks. Now, I wanted to ask some questions about the landscaping. So am I correct that the setback for the building is about 1 metre from Ellen Sterling Parade, about half a metre from Midway Lane, and 3 metres from Transit Way? Is that about correct?
Yeah, look, that is correct. As part of the DRP process, we were asked to open up the canopy with because we have some landscape strips at the ground level, Ellen Sterling Parade, and the intention was to open that canopy up to allow light to get down and water. So yes, it is set back on Ellen Parade because we do want to have some landscaping features as part of that entrance statement. There is a requirement along Transit Way to have a setback line 3 metres from the corner, which goes back to a nil point on the eastern side, which we have landscaping in that zone, including some trees. There are some existing furze trees that we're retaining. And then the other landscape is obviously the courtyard facing Transit Way within the building line and your central courtyard, as well as other balcony landscaping features.
Okay, so how many trees were you going to plant on Ellen Sterling Parade, and how many were you going to plant on Transit Way?
Right, I understand.
There's no landscape plan included in this proposal?
Yes, there was. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see it. What page was that?
As well as an updated landscape plan based on the changes. So that was submitted to the city. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that actually. There was just a note about it was going to be provided after the approval was given. Okay. I mean, am I incorrect about that?
It's not my understanding. I know
I'll ask the city staff. It's okay.
We produced a sketch to indicate for the landscape planners, and then we followed that through with Martin Cuthbert to get that updated, reflecting the sketch.
Okay, but I was just wondering, how many actual trees are you going to?
Landscape concept. Yeah, landscape design.
Sorry, we might just get clarification from that, but the site plan shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, discussion in the background, Mr. Russell, I think from your office or your point. Yes, Councillor Catlano, it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 trees, including the courtyard.
Yeah, okay, because it just was a bit, the proposal was a little bit confusing, because if I looked at, I noticed that page 62 had 3 trees on Transit Way, and then on page 63 there was no trees on Transit Way, and that kind of was consistent throughout the report as I read it. So I was just wondering, are you actually going to put trees on Transit Way or not? And the same goes for Ellen Sterling. I could see that there was some trees there. So, you know, I think it was mainly that was confusing about whether you were actually going to put trees along Transit Way or whether they were going to be shrubs, because there's no species list as well.
No, okay. Councillor, I do recall I went back to the city because there was a comment from the DRP members in terms of the footpath along Transit Way and what the future works were along there. And as a result, I think there was a plan that came out to show there were some existing verge trees along Transit Way, which we were keeping, obviously. And
okay.
we were also adding some trees inside our building line on that landscape strip. So the certain intention was to maintain the verge trees as part of.
Okay.
Yep.
Maybe that's where the confusion came in, was the verge trees. Yep. Okay, and is that the same along Ellen Sterling Parade?
It is. That's correct.
Okay. Yep. All right. So you're not putting in any extra trees except for that big one in the middle of the building?
There were some additional trees inside the building line.
Yeah.
On the northern side where the landscape setback zone is. So yes, we are putting trees into there as well. And
what's the species list? Have you got any species that you're thinking of putting in?
Well, they were on the landscape plan. They were a natural species because the landscape architect was.
Oh, well, I'll ask the staff about that because that's not included in this report.
Oh yeah, I can. Yeah.
We didn't get that. Well, I didn't see it anyway. Yeah, maybe someone could point me to the page if they do. If anyone else on the panel knows. All right, thanks very much.
Thank you. Any further questions of Mr. Richards? Yes, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Jean. A couple of questions on the outside of the building. Condition 11 talks about the control of outdoor lighting, and it talks about spill onto adjacent premises. Is there any proposal to have lighting that would spill onto the road?
Thanks, Councillor. Yes, in terms of the canopy, we have a fairly a large canopy along Ellen Sterling that wraps around the corner on transit. I think what we could do is enter into discussions with the city in regards to that canopy and how we treat the interface between the building and the pedestrian canopy. We have provided some glazed infill there for natural light during daylight hours, but certainly, I think we probably need to consider that with our electrical consultant in terms of that pedestrian canopy to see what the city's requirements would be for lighting.
Thank you for that. Perhaps, Chairman, I might consider a small amendment to 11 to include any spill onto the roadway be managed in an appropriate way or something like that. I haven't got the wording right yet.
Perhaps the existing condition might be padded out a bit, but I think it does cover most of the outdoor lighting. So we'll go into discussion on that in due course and with council staff. Any further questions? Yes, Lindsay.
Just one. Thank you for your presentation. Can I just confirm that you're fairly comfortable with all the conditions that have been recommended, including condition 17?
Could you repeat that conditions?
Okay, it's to do with your canopy over the road reserve and indemnifying the City of Swan for any damage and works that might occur in the road reserve because the canopy comes out over the top of it. It also allows the City of Swan to put an absolute caveat over the land. So that's condition 17.
Right.
It looks to be a standard type of condition that the city might well impose, but I just want to see whether you're comfortable enough with that.
Look, I don't think it's a problem. Obviously, we have a responsibility in terms of our structural design to ensure that canopy is safe.
Yeah.
There are no column supports in general from the street, only on the property line. So
it's actually in there as well. I think they're in there.
Phil, are you talking around there?
Mr. Presiding Member, the sound quality is abysmal. We can barely hear you. I don't know, can you shout?
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you very well at all. Yeah.
Well, I'll ask Mr. Richards to speak louder and we'll also...
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. I think the presenters are with you there. Those of us remote are struggling with the sound.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Yes, Ashley, could you please?
yeah, so I'll go back to the obviously the lighting spill that Councillor Rob Henderson mentioned. But with the building exterior, we'll be providing external lights on the building itself. But in terms of the canopy that straddles the pedestrian path along Ellen Sterling Parade and wraps around the corner to Transitway, look, we would have to have some discussions with the city in regards to that, because I think that's an important interface between our building line and the canopy that sits over the council property. So I think it's important that we get that lighting right and we enter into some sort of agreement there. In terms of our responsibility with that canopy, look, I guess we would have to accept the condition in regards to our responsibility for that canopy. Obviously, it's a large canopy structurally. We would have to ensure that it was structurally sound from a structural engineer's point of view, with all the materials, and ensure that we give that information to the city to assess in our documentation.
And you'd also have to acknowledge that the canopy would be shown on the title as encroachment onto the adjoining footpath.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
All right, thank you. Any further questions of Mr. Richards? If not, councillors and panel members, do you wish to seek any clarification on the matters raised with council staff? Councillor Catalano, you did have, sorry, Councillor Henderson, yes. Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just of the city staff in regard to light spill onto the roads. One of my pet hates is lights shining into cars. Wet winter's night and you can't see anything because of the bright lights. Should we be adding that condition to the conditions?
Through you, Mr. Presiding Member. The condition, as it's been imposed, is there for the purpose of protecting residential amenity, but by and large, in this particular location, there is no adjoining residential. The lighting which will be, or outdoor lighting which would be angled into outdoor areas, balconies and the like, are probably unlikely to be positioned such that at the higher levels that it would be extending into into the road reserve in a manner that might be problematic the way that Councillor Henderson has described it. You may have lighting from above illuminating parts of the road reserve, the road carriageway, but that's a different concept to lights positioned so as to be angled into the eyes of motorists. I think the natural arrangement of lighting in these sorts of developments is such that they will be angled to light the immediate areas of the residential units and not be wasting their light extending outwards. My own view is I don't think it's necessary to impose a modification to that effect, but of course the panel is free to do so if it sees fit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, okay. Councillor Catalano, you had a question on number of trees, I believe.
Oh, yes, thanks. Mr. Russell, you know, the setbacks aren't big enough for very large native trees, are they? Would you say?
No, in an urban environment where this is a unit development,
Yes.
necessarily the setbacks are actually, we don't want them to be too extensive.
Yeah.
So obviously the landscaping area is adjusted accordingly.
Okay.
I think off the concept plan that they'd indicated, Amaleuca quinquenavia is the largest of the trees proposed.
Oh,
That's
yes.
that's in the recessed landscape area off Transit Way. So they've got one. I don't know what size that grows to, but no, it's mainly, as you correctly characterise it, it's mainly landscaping involving what you might term shrubs as opposed to taller trees.
Oh, it's going to be shrubs. They're not putting in Chinese tallow or anything.
Not that I can see on the list.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I couldn't see that list on the in the
But it's
information.
really just a presiding member, your accompanying plans, which should be included.
It's
Your
okay.
accompanying plans at P, so several plans in, have a landscape concept plan, and that's the plan I'm referencing.
So what's the existing street trees there at the moment? Got any ideas?
I don't. Oh, the street trees on Allen Sterling Parade, I'm not too sure what those are, I'm afraid. I think there's 3 of them.
Okay. All right. And so they're just going to basically add a few bushes in the sort of in the landscaping area, and then the one big tree.
Effectively, well, it's important to remember the landscape plan has to be submitted as a condition formally and accepted by the city, but that's what they're proposing at this stage, yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, you had a query.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. With your indulgence, I have another question of the presenter.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. One of the parts of the construction to reduce the rumble that's going to come from the train line through the ground is a floating slab arrangement. This isn't very typical of most constructions. So, what mechanisms will they have in place to ensure that it's actually built with a proper floating slab to be able to reduce internal noise?
Obviously, that's something which we'll have to consider at the building licence stage. We have an engaged structural engineer for the project to start preliminary design work. So I guess that's something we'll have to consider. At the end of the day, we've got to have a building which will stand the test of time. And certainly the idea was to have concrete mainframe structure with a lightweight infill. Now, in terms of train movements and so on, at this stage, we have to ensure that we get the compliance and any requirements that are necessary for the structural engineer to comply. At this stage, we do have a lot of these apartments will have vinyl flooring as opposed to carpet. It's the nature of NDIS, and so we do have an acoustic barrier on those materials. But in terms of the movement, the building movement, I guess that's something we need to get discussion from our structural engineer.
Just to make the point that the report details how that's constructed to ensure that the rumble is controlled in an effective way. And if not built properly, you'll end up with that rumble coming through the building. The tiles won't have any effect. So just want to be sure that there's mechanisms in place during construction to be able to check and make sure it's properly done. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Russell, is there anything in the council policies regarding noise from the underground railway, or the railway line?
Yeah, well, obviously we've got the state planning policy which applies to all of this. I think at the moment, because we're beyond the nominal distances, the application of that, we haven't got anything requiring any express mitigation of future rail noise.
Okay, that's it. Councillor Henderson, does that further clarify it?
Look, yes, it does, Chairman. I understand that, but rumble is one of those things that travels a long way underground, and it's in close proximity, and the design is actually taken into account. They've actually designed it with the concept of the floating slab to reduce that noise coupling into the building. So just wanted to be sure that when it's built that it's done properly. So that's outside of our remit. I just want to make the point with the developer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor.
Mr. Presiding Member, just to add to that, yes, my colleagues alerted me to the application of condition 19, which does include the incorporation of noise attenuation measures as outlined in the acoustic assessment that was accompanying the application. Yes. So there will be some noise attenuation measures imposed in the apartment construction.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. All right. Okay. Any further questions of the presenters or staff? If not, thank you very much for your presentation. Now, as a panel, we will now go into discussion on the item. We do have before us a recommendation for approval, so I'll be seeking a mover and seconder so we can move into discussion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Henderson. Seconder? Lindsay Baxter. Councillor Henderson, you wish to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Chairman. Panelists, I think if you look at the overall development proposal, the quality is of a high standard. I'm very impressed with the work that's gone into that. Certainly the mitigation issues around clear impact from a local centre, but also from future transport have been dealt with, and those would be important in the long term. The materials seem to me to be of a high standard. Really not more to say other than I think the city will benefit from having the facility, so support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Lindsay.
Thank you. Thank you to the City of Swan and the presenters for their presentations today and the report. This is a mixed-use development which complies with the strategic and statutory intent of the local planning scheme and the Ellenbrook Town Centre Development Plan. I'm comfortable with the uses of both multiple dwellings and the shop. The development sits well on the lot, and the configuration around a central courtyard is both an old and a new concept. I'm of the view that this works well for this type of housing typology, and in fact is desirable in order to provide a safe landscape space and build a sense of community for the occupants. The dwelling units are well laid out, notwithstanding that the living areas of some of the dwellings don't have direct sunlight necessarily. The building itself is contemporary, and the use of different materials provides visual appeal. The development at 3 stories is not imposing in the streetscape. Indeed, it assists in giving the Ellenbrook Town Centre structure. The building could have even been 4 stories and similarly would not have been imposing, but the extra build cost may be prohibitive for the client. The inclusion of the canopy at ground floor level is a good feature, and is indeed needed in high pedestrian use areas such as a town centre. I've noted the 3 times that the development was considered by the design review panel, and clearly the willingness of the applicant to work through some of the design considerations. It was pleasing to see that most of the elements of the design were supported in the end. The assessment against State Planning Policy 7.3, residential design codes for apartments, indicated significant compliance with the acceptable outcomes. I'm comfortable with granting a minor concession to the car parking and bicycle parking. Overall, this is a good development, fit for purpose in an appropriate location, and is worthy of approval. I do flag one additional condition to the recommendation, and that is to include the standing wording for approval under the Metropolitan Region Scheme, probably somewhere in the vicinity of either condition 1 or 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, any other panel members wish to speak to the item? Yes, Lee?
Yes, again, I would thank council and the presenters for today. I'm definitely going to be supporting the recommendation contained in the RAI. This is a mixed-use development that will include a shop and a range of apartments. It fits nicely into the current planning framework, which shows that the land is subject to an approved structure plan and has a zoning of mixed use. The site is located in the Ellenbrook Town Centre, and I note that there has been no other development around it. As such, the development would appear to meet the objectives of the Town Centre Development Plan and broader state strategic aim of providing a mix of land uses, including residentials within town centres and close to proposed rail stations. The development has been considered in great detail by the design review panel and has undergone change, for which I thank the applicants for taking on their comments. I think it's very supportable as a contemporary building using a range of different materials and incorporating articulation to break up the form. The canopy provides for extensive shading for pedestrians, and I note that it does go into the road reserve, and that is a matter that's going to have to be dealt with in terms of indemnifying yourselves against council indemnifying itself for that intrusion. I note that the accommodation is to provide for specialist disability accommodation, and that this has been well achieved. I note that the amenity and desirability of the build form will result in central and west facing courtyards, well landscaped, and that most of the apartments do achieve solar access. I also support the slight discretion for commercial parking and bicycle parking. In summary, I think the development is highly desirable and will start, it's much needed in this area that obviously hasn't had much development occur, and will provide an important community-based accommodation.
Thank you, Lee. Councillor Catalano, you wish to speak to the item? No? Okay. All right, well, I won't reiterate the comments of my 2 colleagues here. They've adequately covered it, and I think that the applicants and the council should be commended for their cooperation in developing or proposing the well-designed and well-required development. So that being the case, Councillor Henderson, I'll leave it up to you to close debate on the item, and we'll go put it to a vote.
Thank you. Did I hear a proposed modification from Lindsay?
Yes, sorry, Lindsay,
Yeah,
would you
so-
like to
yes.
move that motion?
Thank you.
Motion to
Yeah. So thank you. My motion would be to include the standard condition for approval under the MRS, which states pursuant to clause 26 of the Metropolitan Region Scheme, this approval is deemed to be an approval under clause 24(1) of the Metropolitan Region Scheme. I would propose including that as either condition 1 or condition 2.
Okay, well, I think it'd be condition 2 if you're moving that motion.
Sure.
Is there a seconder to that?
I'll second it.
Yes, thank you, Lee. Any discussion? If not, I'll put that amending motion to vote. All in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, are there any other changes to the wording of any of the conditions? Councillor Henderson, you were contemplating an amendment to condition 11, was there? Lights still.
Thank you, Chairman. Given Mr. Russell's response in regard to that, I think it's probably okay as it stands. Clearly, Australian Standard does talk about obtrusive effects, so I think it's covered. So I don't need to amend any further, I don't think.
Okay, thank you. Well, if you'd like to close debate on the item now.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we've covered all the aspects clearly. Really nothing further to add other than thank you for the input from the professional side of the panel. It seems that the City of Swan is developing and growing very nicely, so appreciate the input and appreciate the quality of this design. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That being the case, I'll put the application with conditions as amended to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
They're unanimous, mate.
You can stay till the end. It's just about round up. Okay, item 4 on the agenda is Form 2 DAP applications. There are none. Item 5, Section 31 SAP reconsiderations. There are one, and Part C on the agenda, noting SAT applications, Supreme Court appeals, and those are available on the agenda. And item 2, general business. If there isn't any forthcoming, I'll close the meeting at 10:09 a.m. Thank you for the presentation from the applicants and council staff. Thank you for your attendance and clarification of items. I'll close the meeting. Thank you.